let's just go ahead and jump right into this week. When last we left our heroes. So the players are part of this sort of special forces elite squad that is trying to go into an enemy country called Renora and decimate their farming and agriculture supply so that they can weaken the war effort, as well as find a sanctuary city called Sanctuary of non-humans who are heavily discriminated against in Renora. So that is sort of their mission, but they have decided to go the long way around rather than trek straight through Renora. They are going to go around the country, and on their way around, they will go to various side quests that the individual players have. Specifically, Sorel is activating these various obelisks for reasons unknown to him, and Adara's cleric Azarin is going to try to find all of the items of Adara, all of her armor and weapons and things like that. And she already has a shield and an amulet, and she is continuing to try to collect those things. So that's what the players have been up to, and this week we sort of jump right into that. One of the things that they had been talking about doing was using this sort of evil ritual to decimate the land and maybe dry up a river or something like that to impact Renora's agriculture and farming. And I had told them that I would get them the details of this ritual at the beginning of this week, and I did. And it involves using like some crushed up gems, the ashes of a slain priest, as well as either the hands of a freshly slain child or the horns of an unslain fiend. And so clearly a very evil thing, and as I was discussing with my players, I wanted to let them know that this ritual is a ritual in the true meaning of the word, not in the 5th edition mechanics terms. And so I wanted them to know that like this wasn't a spell that you could cast, this wasn't something that anyone could write down in their ritual book or anything like that. This is something that if you combine the right elements and say the magic words over top of it, anyone could make these things happen. Sort of like how I view mixing potions. Like mixing potions is not usually casting spells into them, it's finding the right herbs and plants and roots and mixing them together in just the right ways as to make this concoction that has magical properties clearly, but is not like spell casting. So that is how I described this ritual to my players, and they read it and realize, man, this is super evil. I don't know how okay we are with using this. And I told them, hey, that's part of the thing. Like, I didn't tell you that this was going to be good. I didn't give you only good options. You don't have to take it if you don't want to, but you have the ritual. You can do with it what you will. So they are traveling along the road, trying to figure out what they should do. They have a couple of weeks of downtime. It's actually going to take them about 2 months to get all the way around if everything goes according to plan, which of course it never does. And so they're traveling on the road, and they hear a scream up ahead around the corner, and they run up to investigate, and they find a freshly slain husband and wife, it seems, with a tipped over caravan, and flying in the air is an imp who seems to be toying with this small child, like picking them up in the air and about to drop them and then catching them, things like that. And the players debate for a little while. What are we going to do? I'm going to rush out. And then they all kind of like, wow, what action should I take? And okay, if you come up here. And they just took too long doing that. And so I said, okay, the imp very clearly notices you. And then he snaps his finger and summons a bunch of hellhounds. Now the fight gets much, much harder. And so now we have to deal with that. And there's a whole combat that unfolds in the next round. The imp summons a bunch of barbed devils, and like, goodness gracious, this is so difficult. And they manage to kill everything. They kill the imp, who was continuing to try to summon things every round. And he was able to successfully summon things every single round without having to roll, and that is because in my previous campaign, the Codex Incabulum, which is what prevents fiends from easily summoning other fiends to the material plane if they manage to get there, that ended up in the hells off of the material plane and is no longer being protecting the material plane, basically. And so that is a result of actions my players took in the last campaign. Just another example of how this is a living world where your actions and your choices in this campaign will have effects that continue on for other campaigns and through the rest of this campaign. So it was cool for my players to see the ramifications of some of their choices in previous games playing out, and so that was a neat moment. However, they did manage to rescue the little boy. His name was Thomas, and it was actually really fun. He was about 4 years old, and I've been working at a daycare for several years, and I've been around kids a lot, and so I actually feel like I have a really good understanding of how 4-year-olds process the world and react to things and react to other people, and so it was a very interesting getting to role play this 4-year-old. It would be like if you thought of your best friend or a coworker or something like that, and you said, what would it be like to role play that person? You feel like you know them really well, you've been around them for a long time, and so trying to role play how they would respond to different circumstances and situations is a really interesting challenge, and I got to take that up on this weekend, and it was a lot of fun. It was really interesting trying to roleplay something in a very foreign setting that I was incredibly familiar with. It was a neat challenge. Also, how cool is this kid's backstory, right? He and his family are traveling on the road and they get ambushed by a devil and his parents are slain, but before he can be killed, a bunch of these adventurer hero types come and save him, and then they take him under their wing and he travels along with them, and now he is a blank because he took after one of the player characters and is now sort of following in their footsteps. That is a dope player character backstory, and all the players sort of noticed that. I was like, hey, this is a really PC kind of backstory. And I thought that was really funny as well. Because indeed, that is what they do. They decide to take Thomas under their wing, and they're going to protect him, and like, where else can they send him? They're in the middle of nowhere, and so they know that Thomas and his family were traveling to see Thomas's aunt and uncle and sort of live there away from the war. And so they're like, okay, we're going to try to get this kid to his aunt and uncle's house, but for now, like, we have stuff to do. We have to save the world. Let's keep this kid with us. And, you know, he's a kid, so he's probably got like a half a hit point. We have to keep him super safe. And so they do their best through the rest of the session and continuing to make sure that this kid stays alive and protecting him. And it's a very interesting dynamic. It's sort of changing how they process things. And I thought that would be a neat challenge to give my players. Like, okay, you're good at fighting things and all this stuff. Here's a total innocent that you feel compelled to protect because you're all human and you have humanity in you and you want to protect a small child who's innocent. But how do you do that living the crazy, dangerous, adventuring life? It's a really interesting sort of challenge. A lot of times DMs will do that with pets and animals, and I thought it'd be neat to do it with, like, a kid. So anyways, they take the kid, they travel deep into the Dreshmoore swamp to try to find the obelisk, and they are ambushed very early on by a group of lizard folk who come out of nowhere and say, hey, what do you want? What are you doing here? And the players are honest and tell them what's going on, and they say, in exchange for some gems, one of us will guide you deep into that territory, because we're the blue scales. We're pretty neutral, we're pretty okay. There's some black scales deeper into the swamp, and those guys are not nice. Really evil. They'll ambush you on sight. We'll take you as a guide and get you where you need to go if you pay us. And the players think, okay, that's pretty reasonable. We don't want to get ambushed and we want to avoid traps and things like that. So sure, we'll pay one of these guys. We've got some money now. Let's do that. So it's a massive, massive swamp, and after a few days of travel, they find a lake, and at the middle of the lake, there's an island, and on the island is the obelisk, and so they try to figure out what's our plan, how do we want to approach this. We have this kid we have to worry about and protect. The lizard folk wants to go with them to the obelisk because it's sort of a holy shrine for them, so they say the lizard folk is going to swim in. Varys is going to have invisibility cast on him. He'll walk up and be ready to help out if anything goes wrong, and Sorrel is going to have invisibility on himself also and fly in and not land and inscribe his rune on the obelisk, and maybe they'll get out before any black scales show up. And as they are doing this mission, they get there, and he's partway through inscribing this very complicated rune, and their lizard folk guide betrays them and stabs Sorrel as he is inscribing this, and all hell breaks loose as a bunch of black-scaled lizard folk come up, and the player's like, why did our guide betray us? What's going on? But I guess we have a problem now. Here's the thing. Varys is nearby, Sorrel is nearby, but the whole rest of the party is 150 feet away on shore with a 4-year-old that they're trying to keep calm and focused and everything. So this fight goes very, very differently if everybody is on the island from the get-go. They chose not to do that. So I got to use Matt Colville's action-oriented monsters for a lizard folk queen that was sort of leading this ambush and everything. I would like to give more of a review of how it worked, but I didn't really get to use the system that much because the players were on the back foot the whole time and were basically running away from the fight as quick as they could. But the idea of action-oriented monsters is to make lower-level monsters more difficult and threatening by doing things other than just adding damage and hit points, giving them more options so that you don't have a monster so tough that the players can just beat on it for a whole round, and then when it takes its turn, it's definitely going to drop a player character, most likely. It's going to knock someone out or kill them outright, because it had to be that much damage to be able to tank through all the players' attacks against it. And so it's giving options, reactions, bonus actions, and special villain actions, which work sort of like legendary actions, but they queue off of different rounds. So I got to use that system, and it went okay. The players thought it was neat, but we didn't really get to see it unfold because there was only 2 players in the middle of that combat and everybody else was really far away. So Horus teleports in and tries to save Varys and is unable to do so because he himself incurs a bunch of attacks and goes down. His armor, which casts Death Ward on himself once every dawn, which is pretty cool armor, manages to trigger. He remembered that well after he had gone down, and so he sort of retroactively allowed it to happen. That triggers, and he is able to sort of take all of his action and get out so he can save people, but they sort of escaped by the skin of their teeth. And then they're back to shore trying to figure out what they can do, and Sorel remembers the vision that he had after completing the rune. In the middle of combat, he decided, I gotta inscribe this rune, and we gotta finish this and get out of here. So he inscribes the rune, and he has like a vision. And the vision always shows him where the next obelisk is, as well as this time he was given 2 scrolls. And these scrolls were told, he was told by his patron that they're going to help him get to the obelisk as quick as he can, because in the middle of this fight, Sorel had to use concordance and call on his patron and say, we need your help or we're all gonna die. So you have to send someone. He rolled really, really well, and his patron sent him like a giant skeleton or something like that. Really cool, big, bad guy to help him out. And the players managed to get out of there, and now they have their teleportation scrolls so they can get to safety. Now here is where a really interesting thing comes up. So teleport works in a very specific way. If you've been to an area or you're super familiar with it or something like that, or you have a teleportation circle you are going to, the scroll just works. Otherwise, it has varying degrees of possibility of success depending on how familiar you are with the area, seen it just once, or heard it described to you, or something like that. I needed the players to get from point A to point B. If they were going to teleport, I needed it to work and get them where they were trying to go. And so I just didn't roll. I just didn't have them roll when they used the teleport scroll. It just worked. That was something that I learned a while back, is if you need a result on a die so that your story can progress and go forward, do not roll that die. Because dice are not dramatic. Dice don't know or care that you're in a story, or that you're trying to hit certain beats, or that you have real-world scheduling constraints. Dice don't care. They are cold, heartless, random. And so it is important, if you say, I need this to happen, just don't roll for it. Just let it happen. It's okay to circumvent the rules. You're the DM. You get to decide how these things unfold in your game. So Sorel was given 2 scrolls of teleportation. One to get him to the next obelisk, because this is the last obelisk, is the next one on their list. And so his patron, Karshimis, is saying, hey, I need you to hurry this up. Like, I see that you're making great progress, and I rewarded you, so I'm going to make sure you can hurry up and complete this task that I have given you. So he gives them 1 teleportation scroll that is supposedly so that they can get to the obelisk, and another teleportation scroll so they can get to wherever they want to, so it sort of doesn't derail them too much from their goals, so that the rest of the party would be more incentivized to go with you. Sure, if we can just teleport here, there, and back again, no big deal. We'll go with you and help out. That is Karshimis' goal. He wants this thing to be done as quick as possible. All Sorel really knows is that he is sort of acting as an awakener, lighting these beacons so that some champion or entity of Karshimis can be freed and help Karshimis' cause. He doesn't know who Karshimis is or what they want, what they're about, anything like that. However, small spoilers, they're gonna find out this week. Because my players are gonna light up and activate that last obelisk, and then they're gonna find out what this whole Goose Chase was all about, and I am very much looking forward to this week. Because of Thanksgiving break, my players wouldn't be here on various weekends or playing on like a weeknight and scheduling things ahead of time, so I think we will actually have already played our session the night before this video goes live. So I'm very interested to find out what the players do and how they respond to all of the curveballs that are going to get thrown at them as these things all kind of come to a head in this next session. These are things that I thought would take the players levels upon levels and way longer to accomplish, and they managed to get it done in just a few weeks. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how the players respond to kicking off a series of events that I expected them to be, I don't know, like 12th to 14th level when they dealt with. They're 8th level right now. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. There will be a lot going on. I will give sort of small cautionary tale to everybody considering watching next week. There's a lot of non-standard D&D stuff that's going to come up. A lot of very idiosyncratic things that I have worked out between myself and another player, and sort of cutscenes, things in mind that is not found in the rulebook, and it really might bother some people if they were at my table. I'm here to tell you that I have a pretty good pulse on my players and who they are, and I don't think it's going to bother them. I don't think that they'll be upset by anything that happens, rule breaking or otherwise. If it would bother you, I totally understand that, and know that if I were your DM, I probably wouldn't do this to you, but I'm about to do this to one of my players, and I can tell you it's going to be bad news for a little while for these guys, and I'm very excited to see how they respond to this situation. There's a lot of cool options and opportunities coming up, and role-playing. I've been talking a lot with Walter about his character Sorrel, and what is he going to do now that all these obelisks have been lit? He's accomplished the task he's been given. Now what do you do? How do you respond to that? It's been very interesting to see him start to understand role-playing and character building at a deeper level and realize it's not just like doing things, but I have all these friends and they helped me accomplish these goals. How can I pay them back? How would I feel about needing to pay them back or being obligated to them? What's going to happen as a result of lighting these obelisks, and how does Sorrel process all of that? He has this alternate personality in Mavros. What's going to happen with Mavros after this coming session? All of these are questions that Walter and I have talked about, and I have lots of interesting possibilities and answers to, but I thought it was important that Walter know what is coming, not specifically, but he has some ideas. Everybody else is going to be totally blindsided by this, and I am really looking forward to completely throwing out the rulebook and having a ton of fun in the process. So that was this week. That was saving a little boy and having to take care of that, dealing with ambushes and navigating the swamp and activating these obelisks and deciding not to use die rolls in moments that I don't want to, and all kinds of wonderful things like that. I hope that you learned some interesting lessons or had fun listening to the story. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.